I loved your film. I watched it like 2 times.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. The story is so compelling. I was just like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, what's gonna happen next? um, but yeah, there was just like this fluidity in the way that it was shot throughout the film, and I loved how you kind of took the viewer on this journey with Mickey. I kind of felt like I was there with her, and I could kind of like see, how there was like a style of documentary, but I know that this was also like your first narrative film. So that's what I was curious to know from you, since you mentioned that this, like your first narrative experience in writing and direction. What was that transition like for you, kind of moving from, working in documentary and kind of making this film? How did that influence you? What were your learnings and challenges?
Um, are we live streaming now? Out of curiosity, we are.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. It's like, I don't know what's going on ever with these things. Yeah. So honestly, I feel like the shooting style, I went into it very much in this like run and gun mentality. Like I kind of wanted to have that experience of just being in the action and not necessarily like, I mean, I tried to plan as much as I could, but I also wanted to leave a lot to chance. And so
Hmm.
I think also being the first narrative film, like I wasn't sure that if I like tried to plan too much, I would plan way too far off. So it was kind of like, let's leave a little bit open that we can see what kind of happens, and let's kind of just run and gun and like, be on the street and kind of evolve with what was happening within the day, while trying to stick as much to the structure as possible, but let a lot open for chance. So I think that's kind of where it came. And I also think, the idea was to also have the camera feel like we were with her,
Hmm.
very much subjective in her headspace. Like, I wanted us to feel like a little bit chaotic, a little bit disjointed, a little bit like wondering what was going to happen next, through that camera style. So, yeah, yeah, if that answers, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it was brilliant. And Mickey, you were just so amazing. um, are you guys sisters?
Mhm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I wanted to know what was that like, kind of collaborating with family. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. No, I think it was both as first time directing actors in the sense of like scripted narrative work. Working with my sister was nice because you could, have the opportunity to just maybe not feel as much pressure. It felt a little bit more natural. Also, the story was somewhat close to home for our family. So it was almost cathartic, I think, for all of us. Also, the mom in the film is our mom. So it was a bit of like a cathartic family experience as well, which I think I'm always trying to explore in filmmaking, is this like blurring of like truth, like what, or sorry, like narrative and like documentary and truth, and like what, how much can we bring those two into their worlds, so I think in that sense it was certainly this kind of like truth searching experience in itself, just like working together. I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
It was actually, I felt it was a dance with each other that it was a lot, there was a lot of movement and flow that happened because I felt that we could level on the same mindset a lot of the time. And like, I know her language. I know how, not everything, but when she's asking for something, I feel like I can translate it pretty clearly for myself. And so I feel like the communication in that sense was better than we've ever communicated before. So yeah, it was it was good.
Cool. Yeah, that was great. If you have any questions about my film, like, happy to answer them.
Um, yes, I do. I love your film. I feel like something you were really able to tap into with your film, and I was just speaking about this before, this like idea of truth. And I think like
Mm.
both in documentary and in narrative, we're always searching for what how can we perfectly depict like what is true life and what is true experience. And I think you were able to really capture that. And so I'm like wondering a little bit like what the filmmaking experience was like who was this character to you and this experience to you, and how are you able to like capture that vulnerability and that just like very like truthful space.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this was actually a very personal film for me. I made this when I was in grad school in the Bay Area at Stanford. And I had just moved from India. I was in a new country. I was like in the United States for the first time. And I was like, make this film on 16 millimeter. And I was like, oh my God, what story am I going to find? Right. And I just had like 5 rolls of film, and each roll could just get like 3 minutes. So I could only like film like 15 minutes of footage. So I knew that the story had to be something that is deeply personal and something that I can just kind of go and feel it myself. And so I met Vandana, the character in the film, at a salon, actually. It was just like a walk from where I was living at Stanford. I didn't even have a bike or a car. So I had to just like walk to find my story. Um, and I met her, and then, we kind of like started talking, and I was doing like an assignment before that. And that's how we met. And so she started to just kind of share her story with me. And she said that she also migrated from India, and that she recently lost her father, and she couldn't go back home, in spite of that. So I don't know, that just kind of like suddenly struck me. And I was also like new to the country, and there was just like distance on my mind. I was also like far from home. So I think just that theme of like distance and being away from home, and just the experience of being a new immigrant in a new country just kind of struck me. And so I was like, I have to tell a story about this theme. And I thought I could do that, through Vandana's story. And so she just agreed to like be filmed. And I actually filmed like the visuals first, because I had a very tight production schedule. So I took like a week to just shoot the shots, and I just went there 3 days, and I kind of knew what kind of shots I wanted. And I was really like um, careful about how much film I would use, because you have only 15 minutes to shoot. So it better be perfect, right? It's not digital. So I did that. And so I went to these different locations. I just kind of try to get like her life. And after that, she also told me that she has like these conversations with her mother back in India on the phone. And, they kind of just talk about whatever. It seemed like they had a really close bond. And so I asked her, do you talk about your father? And then she said yes. So I said, do you mind if I recorded one of these phone conversations that, you're going to have with your mom? And she agreed. So I was like really excited that, she agreed. And it was because it was going to be a really personal chat, and that she just trusted me to kind of go into her house. And it was just that one phone call. I was in her apartment, and she literally just called her mom, and her mom was fine being recorded, but they just had like the most natural chat, right? It wasn't even scripted or anything. I mean, she just kind of told me, okay, I'm just going to go ask her how her day was, and then we might just talk a little bit about our dad, because like that's what we do. So yeah, I just like recorded that one phone conversation. And once I heard that call, I just knew that that call is kind of going to be like the bed of my film, because I felt like it just would kind of take her story forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used that call to my advantage. And I think that also kind of brought that personal,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's remarkable to hear that story, because one of the things that I noticed after first watching was that all of the story was told through the phone call, and there was never any of that like diegetic sound. Like it was never what was happening in real time. And I thought that really
Mhm.
added to the storytelling. And I was actually, one of my questions was going to ask why you made that choice, but it kind of came to you organically. But I think it lent itself to that distance, like almost like you're going through the motions of the day and your life, but there's like also this very like personal, other like distant, very connected part of you that happens almost like you, like you're kind of going through the motions of the day. And I thought that was like a really beautiful part of the film. So yeah, I mean, that was like my other question about it. I know
I have
Michaela has a
for
question.
you.
So.
Okay.
Leaving
Yeah.
home, there's this, when you do that, there you have like social pressures that you're
Mhm.
facing, and then also the pressure of leaving your loved ones. It's never easy, and especially coming from a traditional society that what most of its life is based on very well kept traditions, it can be so difficult. And I was just wondering if you had, and especially for a woman, and so I was wondering if you had any advice for women who are facing those same challenges.
Well, I think just like stay connected because that's what I did. I think I got closer with my family and friends back in India because the time that you would spend with them became a lot more precious. So I would kind of like just a lot like weekends to talk to my friends, and that kind of became like my therapy because also grad school is like incredibly hard, and like just kind of trying to do all of this, figuring it out on your own. It's still a very different experience. So I think kind of because you're so far away from your family, and they do say it like distance makes the heart grow fonder. And I think that's what at least I learned. And also through Vandana's story, really just the fact that she was so close with her mother, I was like almost jealous. I'm like, wow, like I wish I could just like have a 1 hour conversation with my mom, because just kind of being able to like talk about memories, and of the same person, for her as her dad and her mom as a husband, and that they both were able to really like connect in that space. I felt like, yeah, just kind of staying connected was, I would say, like what helped me. And yeah, also like through Vandana's story. But also like what Amy, you were asking me about like the sound and how you like didn't actually hear the location sound. That was actually also constrained because because I was filming on 16 millimeter, I couldn't also record sound because the camera would just crank and makes too much noise. It was all silent, so all the visuals were silent, so I had to get more creative about the sound design. So all of the sound that you see is just kind of stuff that I put together later. And then I think because of that, the phone call also kind of became like the essential part of the storytelling.
Yeah,
But-
that was
okay.
it was huge. No,
So
Red in the back.
this is kind of awkward. I have not even met Amy yet. She's like, "Who is this
Oh,
weird thing in the face real quick?" And I cut you off, Zulfiya. So if you want to finish your thought.
oh no, I actually just had another question for Amy, but if there's no time for that, it's okay.
Well, you know what? I want to get to the audience questions because you guys got a lot. And so that's
Okay.
my goal, Amy. Good to meet you. Michaela, good to see you
nice.
again.
I mean, I saw your introduction of me, which was very
Okay. So we do know each other.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, just pop right in. Cool. So like I said, we have a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to kind of consolidate a few. So let's start with Amy and Michaela. I think both Jan Sears and Joshua Basanos, and Josh is like trying to like hog all the questions because he has one for you too, Zulfiya. But
Okay.
they're really both are actually. Let's go to Zulfiya first. Sorry, Amy, but
Okay.
I guess the question actually is like they're really kind of enamored with like your choices, your very specific choice to hang into the VO and use the phone call as like a core, not just motif, but like the core storytelling device, right? So like, I guess if I was to surmise both their questions together, is like, how do you come to that choice? And you already talked about it a bit. You did. You said like you came across these phone calls and all that kind of stuff. But how do you come to this choice to make that big decision to make that kind of a centerpiece that your film flows through?
Wow. Yeah, I think for me, it's the the decision was easy for me because that felt the most real and the closest to what Vandana's experience was. Because it's interesting because when I first pitched the film, I was going to have a voiceover because I was like, I'm going to record her, talk about her story, and have visuals over that. But then once I got to know that she has these phone conversations and she agreed to be, recorded, and I was like, there's nothing more authentic than that. Like actually having someone, have a real call with a person so close to them. So I just kind of made the choice to have that phone call also after I recorded it because of how, I just found how powerful that was. if the phone call wasn't that interesting, I probably would not have used it, you know. But because the phone call itself had the story and it kind of brought across the themes that I wanted to say, which was like distance, just the feeling of memory, and, you know, the way that she was longing to, you know, just think about her dad. And I felt like, you know, just the phone call just felt so much more authentic that way. And it also was on the editing table that I decided that this is what I need to use. I'm not going to like record a voiceover. So yeah, that's how I came to that decision.
That's incredible. That's like that magic documentary film that you have to like allow yourself to be open to, you know, to receiving. So that's really cool to hear. And that you found it in the edit, not that it was, you know, not that was kind of like prescribed early on. All right. So now for Aimee and for Michaela too. I mean, so I'm gonna kind of ask my own question. So sorry to the others that did, but I'm gonna try to kind of pair everything together. But what's one of the most? I mean, the film is amazing. I watched it a couple times and I loved it. And from doing a lot of work on the streets of San Francisco as a filmmaker too, like I felt it. But one of the really interesting things is the credit section where you see the last name over and over again, right? The same last name. So like this seems like a very personal story. This seems like a very family story. Like so to be brave enough and courageous enough to pull a family in and to tell this story, like how, like give us a little bit about the genesis of how this came about as like a family story, if you could.
So I will say Andy Hoffman, our wonderful DP, is not a part of the Hoffman family.
Okay, let me retract my question real quick.
It is very coincidental that there happens to be just like an additional Hoffman to the clan. But yeah, I mean, I think the story was really birthed from mother-daughter relationships at the core, and the idea of wanting to be independent from that, like as a daughter to be independent from your mother's life, and also as a mother to like keep things from your daughter, or like, you know, inherently you're just bringing her along with this crazy ride in which you're living in, but you're inherently trying to protect her from it, which sometimes like, you know, can bonk heads. So I think that's kind of where it started to birth from. And then there are some personal incidents of like, you know, being evicted from our family home, and just kind of losing control as a mother, of what you wanted your life for your daughters to be. And as a daughter, what is your reaction to that? And then the setting kind of really came more to living in San Francisco and understanding like this idea of transition. And you're not like, there's many different forms of homelessness, and some of that is, you know, what people see every day on the streets. It's a lot of mothers with their children like in and out of homes and living in cars, and like there's just kind of a lot of these um, parts of living houseless. And so I think one other thing I really wanted to do, and I think I always try and do in telling stories, is just trying to peel the layers back on what is the experience of people on the peripheries of society, that a lot of other people like at first glance like tend to judge. So like how can we have a relatable story that other people can understand, mother-daughter relationships, but maybe the setting is different than something you would have experienced yourself. So I think that was kind of the genesis and realization of the story.
Wow. That, I mean, like to be able to bring something so personal and have it be a microcosm and actually put that in a world, center that in a world where you're extrapolating out to more macro themes, and just like you said, so like both you guys, all three of you guys have created films that are like seem so both deeply personal and kind of can span out to something so much more universal and so much more like empathic in nature. And you guys all succeeded so well at that. So I appreciate you guys for sharing your art today and your films today. And thanks for having me awkwardly jump in the back end of this Q&A. You guys are amazing.